you one and all once again for joining us here today on the Real Results Podcast. My name is Rich Hill and I am your host here of the Real Results Podcast since day one, and I cannot thank you enough for joining us here today. Whether this is your first time checking us out or if you've been with us since the beginning, we cannot appreciate you more than we already do. So make sure that if it is your first time checking us out, you go back and check out all the awesome episodes that we have, the great topics we've had, guests we've had, and make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future guests or conversations. So you can find us on all major podcast platforms, whether that be Podbean, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Deezer. I believe you can get us on your Alexa if you really wanted to. So today we have a very special chat with Coach Sam and Coach Crystal, both of which returning to the podcast, some of our more popular guests that we've had. And we're talking all about female health today. That's right. We were going to have kind of a generalized chat, but the ladies decided that this was the topic we were going with, and away we went. So I joined them along for the conversation, just like you can. And before we get to that conversation, I do have to go through a couple quick plugs here. So first and foremost, we have to check out 360 Fitness and everything going on in Red Deer and Sherwood Park in Alberta here in Canada. So you can check out 360 Fitness at www.360fitness.ca. That is for all of your personal training, all your supplement needs. We have blogs, we have podcasts, we have it all on there. So go check us out, www.360fitness.ca. You can find us on all major social media platforms. So you can find us on Facebook at 360 Fitness Personal Training, both Red Deer and Sherwood Park. You can find us on Instagram at 360 Fitness PT or at 360fitness.shbk. You can also find us on Twitter at 360 Fitness RD and at 360 Fitness SP. You can find myself on Instagram at rshill_fitness and Twitter at rs_hill. So with those cheap plugs out of the way, guys, one last thing I have to mention. Because it's the new year and because things are a little bit different this new year with COVID closing a lot of gyms, people forced into home workouts, whether you have an immunity issue, whether there's somebody that's around you that does, or if you're just being super cautious and you're not quite ready to return to the gym, that's okay. We have an online at-home 21-day challenge workout designed specifically for that. Yes, it can get boring doing just push-ups, squats, and sit-ups over and over again, and sometimes we don't know what else we can do. So this 21-day challenge breaks down 3 weeks of full workouts that you can do, a different way of working out for each day of the week. You get nutrition with that, you get some lifestyle tips, different trackers, the whole 9 yards. So we want to make sure that you're seeing the best results this New Year's, regardless of your situation. So you can follow that link on any one of the places that you found this podcast. So it should be in the bio, or in the description, I should say, of anywhere you found this. The link will take you directly there. We have a self-guided version, so you can do this totally on your own, or if you need a little bit of extra help, we do have a trainer-assisted version as well. So follow that link through the description. If you have questions, make sure that you send us a quick little comment or send us a message. And we can help you out with anything and everything. But with that being said, everybody, we're going to dive into our chat with Crystal and Sam, all about women's health. I will meet you on the other side. All right, everybody, we are here live at 360 Fitness Sherwood Park. So if you hear any background noise, that is definitely some people getting real results through some painful work. Well, not that painful, but today I'm joined by two very wonderful young ladies. Coach Crystal and Coach Sam, both making their return to the Real Results Podcast. Ladies, how are we?
Wonderful. Great. How are you, Rich?
I'm doing fan-freaking-tastic. It's a Monday when we're recording this, so who knows when it's going to go out, but whatever day that people are listening to, thank you so much. So, ladies, we kind of had a fitness roundtable with Jack and Mike a couple times, so I figured it was the ladies.
Time for the gals.
Time for the girls to shine, and I can already tell that this is a very different setup because you've both done some research on some stuff. So, obviously have some stuff you want to talk about, so take the floor.
Well, we really want to pick the most the topic that was going to make Rich blush the most. So we're going to be talking about the menstrual cycle today and how it affects things such as strength, your hunger, your moods, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, your weight, your bowel movements, all the kind of nitty-gritty menstrual kind of topics that we could think of.
Everything that we go through on a monthly basis that nobody wants to talk about. That's the stuff I like to talk about.
So I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Now, for us that don't know, what is the menstrual cycle? No, I'm just kidding. All right, so we're talking about menstrual cycles, so that's going to be kind of an overarching theme, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that you want to educate people on, I guess, pre, post, during?
Well, basically, we just kind of want to break down some walls, too. It's, sometimes not a very well talked about subject, and I think women go through this monthly change every 28 days, and they put some really hard expectations on themselves, and we just kind of want to educate people in the sense of what your body's going through, what kind of work it's doing, and how that's going to affect everything.
It's very stigmatized, right?
Very.
Like it's almost viewed as like, don't talk about it. We don't want to talk about this. But it's like a natural recurring natural recurring process. Thank you for the word. That comes up every single month. So again, it's something that as fitness professionals we definitely have to learn how to deal with.
Mm-hmm. And the coach's understanding of it, I think, and being comfortable to talk about it is going to help the female client or athlete or whoever you're working with understand what's going on and have confidence that their coach understands what's going on, because that's a big thing. So they're like, well, why is this harder today when I did the same thing last week? Well, it can change. Or why is my weight up when it should be down? I've been working, I've been doing all of the things I'm supposed to be doing, but your body is naturally changing over that 28, my case 24-day period that is going to affect a lot of things. And if your coach doesn't understand, then sometimes it goes into, well, you're not doing something, which is very detrimental to that client as well.
Well, especially because, like, when people feel stigmatized about talking about it, they don't necessarily bring it up. That it's like, hey, it's my time of the month. Whereas a coach needs to have that open communication with people and understand, like, hey, guess what? Doing an assessment during menstruation cycle might be completely different than when you're outside of that side of things, right?
Exactly.
So being able to be like, hey, can we do this maybe next week? Is always a good open communication forum for clients, right? That's the biggest thing that we ask from clients is communication every step of the way, right?
Yeah. And the more we can educate you guys about it, and that this is normal, and that your body's going to go through these processes, we just want you to feel that strong connection with your body, and know what's happening inside and out. And I think comparing, like when Rich was talking about assessments, compare apples to apples. So if you're always going to do your weigh-ins, say the second week of your menstruation or the second week of your cycle, always do it in that. So you're not comparing it to a different part of your cycle, right?
Exactly. So let's start with the strength portion and work our way down. So your strength research is very interesting around some of this. Crystal and I, like Rich said, came quite prepared and looked into quite a few things. Yeah.
This wasn't even supposed to be a topic chat, but here we are with the full-on topic. So I was just hoping for a bunch of bull crapping around, but obviously this is only when we have the guys on.
It's very interesting in some of the research, too, because it's focused around some not functional things, whereas when Crystal and I look at our performance or our experience and research done in different ways, it does show that then the first 14 days is generally where you're going to get the most strength gain, muscle size, muscle strength, that kind of thing, but it's also subject to...
It's anecdotal, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be case-by-case basis.
Exactly.
So
there's going to be some change, but...
show 100%.
Yeah, that first 14 days really where you're going to be able to push the hardest, and then there's quite a few different changes that come in that luteal phase, ovulation, things like that, where you start to feel some of your major changes happen.
And I think the biggest thing here, like we're talking basically days 1 to 14 right now, but knowing your body. Some people, like Sam mentioned, her cycle is more like a 24-day period. Sometimes I'm more like a 30. So that's going to differ a little bit, but we're going to kind of speak to the masses of like what is a typical 28-day cycle here. Yeah, so you can kind of expect from that 1 to 14, after your first day of your period, your estrogen levels will slowly continue to rise. And if we're speaking to training terms, so should your weights, your reps, your sets, that sort of thing. So if we want to work and do the best, instead of working against your body, use your hormones to your advantage, right? That's going to be your strongest growth phase. So hit the gym hard those 2 weeks.
No, even with this, with estrogen levels coming up higher, right? Isn't that a detriment to the testosterone?
For females, it's going to be more estrogen and progesterone that are going to have your big fluctuations. Testosterone isn't going to come into play that much. It's not going to rise and fall as much. So yeah, the estrogen rising is going to actually help with our, and like subjective things like me and Sam were talking about, like, hey, your mood's probably going to be increased. And we know when we feel better mentally, we're going to hit the gym harder. And I think that's why the research sometimes is hard to interpret, because it's subjective, where it's like, hey, I feel not bloaty. I feel really good mentally. So lots of times that transfers into the gym setting. But there is some actual physical, anatomical things as well that's happening in our body that's going to let us be stronger and hopefully push more.
Yeah, and your body temperature is rising towards the end of that 14 days too, so you're going to feel a little looser, and your warm-up isn't going to take as long, or it should still take a long time, but you're going to feel a little bit better. With that rise, you're going to feel like you can push a little harder, unless you're doing things like hot yoga, but strength-wise, if that's what we're focusing on, you are going to be able to push that a little bit harder, and your body's going to respond better to it.
And then coming into, say, days 15 to 28, so once you hit that ovulation phase, when you actually release the egg, your estrogen is going to dip heavily. It drops off, and your progesterone is going to shoot right up. So during this kind of phase, we're going to deal with things like increased water retention. You'll probably start dealing with constipation, which obviously is going to make us feel bloaty and crampy and kind of gross. Your weight might start to rise in general because of those things, not because you're actually gaining weight, which we want to put a huge factor on for those of you that are always constantly weighing yourself. It's not necessarily fat gain that you're gaining over these PMS type issues. It is sheerly water. It's maybe holding on to excess stuff in your intestinal tract. But those are the kind of things that you can start feeling in those last 2 weeks.
And with that could be a time to focus more on some endurance, your mobility, that kind of stuff, because that's going to help get some of your digestive system moving again, help with the bloating, help with the constipation as well. So that's when you hit your PRs, you hit some hard strength training goals, and then you work on some of those endurance, some technique-based stuff, some accessory muscles that are a little bit smaller, those type of things, is where you're going to see the better performance on that side of things, is going to be those endurance-based activities.
When I think it's we see a lot of females, and I know we've probably both done it sometimes, use it as an excuse, right? It's fuck it, we're just not going to. Yeah, I know. I try every podcast. I'm sorry. But not to use your PMS symptoms or what your body's going through as an excuse, but try to put your training to better use, right? Educate yourself on, hey, my body might not be able to push a PR today, and that's okay. But what would it be better suited to go through today?
Yeah, and I think having that communication, again, is really important. And then going more towards kind of your actual menstruation, your prostaglandins are going up, things like that. You may switch from constipation to the diarrhea, and then your water your water retention and things like that, your performance is going to go down again, or you're going to feel like it's going to go down because you're not absorbing the nutrients and things like that you need to perform those high demand mental activities. So again, looking at doing some different things, some yoga, stretching, mobility, higher rep activities where you don't need that kind of big mental, okay, I have to pull this PR deadlift 5 times and work as hard as I can.
Is it more of a mental side of things, or is it actually the CNS doesn't fire as heavily during that time?
The mental game is probably that big because we're not changing the nervous system at that point, but the digestive system is. So that part
being able
of it,
to brace everything
exactly.
is a little tighter.
It's a little
tougher.
harder. Yeah, you're feeling crampy. Your uterus is literally moving around at some point, cramping. So it can affect maybe not the nervous system's ability to innervate, but your ability to hold that brace. I think may change.
Absolutely. I think it's again, it's all about education and knowing why you're going through and why you're feeling the things we do. The next thing I kind of wanted to talk about was like cravings and calories and that sort of things, because I think most people deal with some of this. So basically anywhere from that day 15 to day 28, so within a 2-week period, I know 10 days out, I am an insatiable animal. I am starving. So realistically, it's depending on the person, but it can be anywhere from 100 to 300 extra calories a day that your body can actually use. Your BMR will go up because it is doing some heavy duty work. So I think like that's knowing that that's normal. Don't use it as an excuse to overeat, but know that your body might actually need some extra stuff. And the worst things that we can actually do is feed it full of sugar.
Yeah,
well,
that's what we want.
Yeah.
Well, again, going back to kind of the weight loss focus for a lot of people, because that's what we deal with a lot of times, right? A lot of people that are looking at eating, below their BMR already, it's such a struggle to get people eating kind of that 17, 18, almost 2,000 calories in some cases. Like, people just cannot wrap their brain around it. That's almost why we recommend that amount, too, because eventually you're going to have that kind of caloric burn coming through, menstruation cycle, where you need those extra calories. So when people are chronically under-eating, not only are they doing themselves a disservice in the gym, but just hormonally and everything as well.
And then it's just really hard to mentally tell yourself no, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and then again, we could go into a whole different topic of like, basically now I feel like a failure because I couldn't stay on track of my diet because not only was I under-eating before, now I'm severely under-eating because my body's requiring more energy.
Yeah, that mental game is always going to play a factor in everything that we do, right? So, again, it's fine if you go around to different areas because obviously everything in fitness is connected.
Absolutely.
Just try not to get too deep into the rabbit hole like we sometimes do around here.
Right.
But yeah, anyways, back to nutrition and just, again, like, what are some of the nutritional needs? What are some things that women need to think about as they're kind of getting closer to menstruation?
So one thing to think about if you are looking for, I know I crave carbs and bread and things like that, but that satiety is still going to be important. So looking for the protein intake as well is going to be important. Like you said, you're burning more calories. Your body is literally working. It's going through not a challenging time, but it's doing some extra work that it wasn't doing a week ago, 10 days ago.
Well, to be fair, the body's under a lot of stress during that time.
Yeah.
Anyways, right?
So looking for the protein intake, I think, is important. And keeping in mind that your iron levels may change a little bit, so looking more towards maybe adding some red meat into your diet that week before, that 10 days before, may help because your body is literally preparing for it. So it may be craving things it's not usually usually craving. Magnesium is another one. It may be really important during that time. It's when you feel crampy, things like that. Your uterus is a muscle, so it still may need some extra supplementation for that.
Yeah, those micronutrients become that much more important.
Well, and for people that suffer with like severe cramps, right? There's always such a wide range that people suffer with. So yeah, magnesium might be a really good supplement. Obviously, water and fiber. Like the one thing we talked about too, coming up to that is that most people will deal with some sort of constipation and feeling that bloaty and gross, which is probably actually going to add to that cramping feeling. So make some fiber, some protein, some iron. Chicken thighs, guys, are a really good iron supplement as well if you're not into eating red meat. Chicken breasts, like your white meats, don't have much iron or none at all. So if you're alternatively looking to like more dark meats, like your chicken thighs, chicken wings,
a little bit more fatty,
that sort of thing. Yeah.
Not deep fried chicken wings, but
not deep fried chicken wings.
Bake them yourselves. It tastes delicious.
Yeah, 100%. And using things to address some of your mood as well. Because if you get into the emotional eating side of things, that can be a huge part of kind of you have cravings, and Crystal talked about feeling like a failure, but that emotional eating can cause extra stress, which is going to help you retain water and bloat, which isn't ideal. So looking at doing the extra things for yourself to help manage your mood, whether it be journaling a little bit better. I know I get really down for about 8 days before, so for me a gratitude journal is super important because it kind of just helps me stay up there and stay motivated and not use it as that excuse, I don't feel like it, this is just when I'm not going to. So I know I find that really helps me, and my sister, same thing. She kind of has some depressive issues beforehand, so for her that time before is really challenging. So to keep motivated and things like that, she has to consciously change some things to help her mood kind of maintain, not even improve, but just maintain more on a level field.
So even stress maintenance during this time is obviously a huge thing, right? And that just goes for general everyday life, but specifically when your emotions are kind of running wild on you. That's like coping with stress through food is obviously one of the easiest ways that we can do that. Obviously there's alcohol, there's drugs and stuff like that as well. But those are more the negative side. So what are some, again, you mentioned journaling, but what are some other positive things that people can do to kind of keep their mental health in check and even avoid utilizing the stress calories, shall we call them? What are some things that you guys have used that work for you or that have worked for clients that you guys have worked with?
Well, honestly, just keep moving. I think is the big thing. Trying to get out, even though it's a foot of snow outside, but even just getting that general over some sunshine, get active. Being moving is actually the best PMS safeguard is to keep moving, keep those serotonin levels up, dopamine, those sorts of things. So even when you don't feel like doing it, even just a walk, and I think it's just doing what you can at that time.
And that's going to help with some of the feelings of bloating and cramping as well, which may improve your mood, which is going to help the stress as well.
Just helps with blood circulation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And maybe you can talk to your trainer and be like, hey, I think I need actually an extra session to get me out of my house during that time before. Being willing to work with your clients too and say, okay, we do 3 sessions a week for 2 weeks, and then we do 4 sessions. One of those is just a mobility, whatever it is, but an extra session to help your clients get out of house, stay moving, feel a little bit better.
Brilliant. I think this whole thing is based around just preparing yourself. Know what's coming next. Hey, I know that next week I'm going to feel like this. So maybe it's, hey, you don't have any junk food in the house. That week, you make sure that there's no temptations. Make sure your meals are prepped. So if you are feeling, not as good, all that, you don't have to do your meal prep or make poor choices, right? So be ready to know that this is how you're going to feel, and then hit it in stride.
Yeah. And prep meals that you really like. If you have a favorite meal, maybe make it that week. For me, I know if I'm craving something and I don't have it, then I don't really feel like eating. And I go back to what Rich said, that under-eating stage when I'm already burning more calories. So for me, I have to prep something I really enjoy eating, because if I say no to that craving, I'm like, oh yes, beat that, I don't have to eat my other meal. Which doesn't make sense. I know that doesn't. But actively taking it in stride, like Crystal mentioned, is important. So preparing and knowing yourself. I think that's the biggest thing. No one can tell you, be like, oh, you're feeling this. No, but know yourself and go, okay, this is how I usually feel. This is what's going to help it.
And saying to yourself, hey, these are the cravings that I'm typically having. What can I do to subside the craving for, chocolates and chips and all the kind of junky foods that we don't necessarily need in our diet, especially around any time of the year, really.
Yeah.
But how can we switch those to be kind of a healthier approach, whether it's just switching to a dark chocolate, implementing more fruit or sugars into the nutrition throughout the day. I think that's a really good point, is just prepare and plan ahead.
Because it's not just Christmas or Thanksgiving, something that comes once a year. This is once a week you're going to feel like this out of the entire month. And if we're talking about an overall weight loss goal, if you're messing 1 week out of the entire month,
it's 12 weeks a year,
right? That's a quarter of your gains gone right? Like, this is
100%.
happening once a month for most people, regardless if you want it to or not.
And so it can't really be that crutch excuse, too,
Right?
Because if it's happening once a week, every
Yeah.
4 weeks,
Yeah.
it's...
You know what's coming.
It's like the excuse, it's like, well, it's the weekend, right?
Yeah,
like,
right?
oh, it's
Yeah,
the
they
weekend.
come
It's
every
like,
week.
well,
Yeah.
it's every week. It's like getting to Friday is not a big reward.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that's the expectation here, guys. Like, we shouldn't be like, yeah, I made it to another Friday. It's like, no, life is pretty good. Let's make it a couple more days. But anyways, digress.
So I think, just taking control of your situation, and hopefully some of those tips and tricks will definitely help. Because, for once a week out of every 4, this is how you're going to feel. So hopefully that just helps, kind of gets you closer, better results, and get you to your goals.
So we kind of talked about, like, leading into the menstruation week, but menstruating, like the week of menstruation, like, is there anything specifically nutrition-wise should change, or is it pretty much just business as usual there?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, I
It's pretty
feel
consistent.
Yeah, like those first few days, depending on who you are as a woman, how you feel those first couple days, like those are probably the days you don't really feel like very much. But in regards to like hormones and everything's actually starting to be on the rise and heading in the good direction.
Which can be motivating if that's something you didn't know before. Is
Yeah.
like, yes, I'm back on the rise. Like, I'm
Yes.
gonna, like, 4 days from now, I'll probably feel significantly better. But you still want to be, like, you are still able to do activity. Like, you can still do all of those things. And there's lots of kind of good hormones coming back into that strength gain.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people really think the actual menstruation, like, week is, like, the one where you kind of slack or, you're maybe not feeling good and you kind of take it easy. When in reality, it's probably the week before that we're at our worst physically. So, yeah.
When the body's doing all the work.
Yeah,
essentially,
right?
And
So-
physiologically, that's when it's the hardest to make the strength gains and things like that. When you are doing, like, when you are in that menstruation phase, you're back on the rise, like Krista said, so you can get back into that as long as you're
feeling good.
You're feeling good.
Yeah, go with how you're feeling, and if you feel great, hit it hard and start hitting it hard. So,
if you have dealt with any like low iron anemia, things like that, just keep an eye on it. If you do feel a little more dizzy, like I know a couple people who that's a big deal because they're very anemic naturally, not naturally, but just their norm is like that. So just keep an eye on that, and don't, if you feel dizzy, like alter and kind of modify as you go. As fitness professionals, we learn you go in with a plan, and sometimes you have to modify it. But as far as from the physiological point of it, like, go as hard as you want during that phase, really.
And talk to your trainer about how you're feeling. Like, don't hide those things, guys. If you're feeling dizzy or you're feeling... we're here to help you through those things, but we can't help you unless we know what's kind of going on.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, as coaches, I guess, like, where do you see big opportunities for clients during this time? Like, where do you see, like, what can we do as coaches to help support people, essentially?
Well, I think, I've had lots of clients for years and years now where we're on a pretty, first name basis, I guess. But the biggest results and biggest gains we've seen is when we talk about these daily things. When you're talking about digestion, how you're absorbing your bowel movements, your menstruation cycles, like when you've kind of got the rest of those things down pat good, when it's like when diet's first new, when all this stuff is first new, right? It's a lot to focus on, but when you start getting more dialed in, and you have all of those other balls under control, and we can start focusing on these things, that's when we can actually start making gains all the time, if we can get these little other things under control, I think.
And even just asking and be like, okay, we're seeing a plateau, like we haven't made any big lifts. If your client's feeling frustrated, you're feeling frustrated, you're not sure where you are, a simple question could be, okay, where are you in your menstrual cycle? Are we day 26 or are we day 3? Because that's going to matter.
Yeah.
And then,
or if you're all over the place, right? Like, that's going to play a huge part. Your body's under constant stress. Like, we talk a lot about, I think, mental stress, but, like, the physical stress of your body as well. If you're under physical strain from your body and hormones, plus mental stress, right? Those couple all together to make a chaotic kind of training program.
Absolutely. And if we get into other things where your athletes, this can be a whole other topic, but if your athletes or clients are losing their cycle, then you have to take a look at what's going on. Is your training stress too high? Is their diet not enough? Is their mental stress in play? That's, again, a whole other female triad conversation.
Yeah.
But it's just, if you're not having that conversation, you don't know that either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can touch base on that a little bit. I mean, at least, we have a little bit of time here left. So, when it comes to high-performance sports athletes, it seems to be very common, at least, that high-performance athletes end up losing their periods because they're at such low body fat percentages or their training stress is so high. So, I guess as a coach, what would you recommend for somebody in kind of that situation to kind of stay regular on their cycles? Or is there anything that we could do?
They kind of say the limit that most research is about 15% body fat. Kind of underneath that is when we don't have enough body fat. The basis is you don't have enough body fat to carry a child, which is why we have a menstruation cycle to start with. And basically you're not healthy enough to support that growth, so we end up just losing our cycles.
So as far as the training around it, I haven't had a lot of experience with that as of yet.
I've never really had somebody that's gone to that point. But at the same time, I guess it depends on your goals, right? If that is something that you're worried about, if you're trying to conceive or shortly, that's kind of in the back of your head, it would obviously be something we'd have to change with your diet. Or look at cutting back your training. So it totally depends on what your goal at that time in your life is. But definitely probably, and again, I did not do my research on this part, but you'd be more open to injuries, overtraining, that sort of thing, when you're not having those cycles and those hormonal kind of ups and downs that typically most females would have.
Yeah, it's common in competition athletes as well, like bodybuilding, that kind of stuff. So being monitored, if that is your goal, you have to cut down, you have to get down, but having a doctor partner with you and communicate with your trainer is going to be important too, because you're also looking at, when you're doing those things, your kidney function, your liver function, your hormonal function, your menstruation cycle, all of that. So like I said, I'm with Crystal. I didn't do my research just based on the high performance, but I know that it can be an issue. So having a doctor on board and helping you is also a good idea if that's your goal.
Yeah.
I'd imagine as you get to lower body fat percentages as well, you'd probably have to definitely include fat in your diet regardless of what happens, just to maintain that proper hormonal production versus, again, having it naturally occur in the body. But, So, okay, switching away from that, let's talk about post-menstruation then, menopause. Let's touch a little bit on that. Obviously, that can be a whole damn conversation itself. But obviously, if we're going this direction, we might as well touch base on it a little bit. I guess, for people that aren't aware, what is it? And what are some of the effects that it can have, ladies?
So really, I think the limit is almost just after 30 is kind of most women's peak, and from there on out, our estrogen levels start to drop. And as we kind of had said, that
similar to males too. Males, as soon as you hit 30, testosterone starts to drop as well. Our bodies want to die on us. We're trying to keep them alive.
So, and as we kind of said, the estrogen rising in those first 1 to 14 days kind of where we get our strength. So as we start to go through menopause or perimenopause, things like strength start to go down. Our ability to gain muscle mass starts to go down. And then we know as we start to lose muscle mass, that's when fat starts to accumulate. So as our muscle mass decreases, our BMR decreases, our metabolic rate decreases, and that's where women really start to usually see that extra fat creep on that was there before. Without necessarily changing a whole bunch of their diet, it just starts to kind of happen naturally.
Yeah, that hormonal change kind of just not takes over, but definitely leads into a lot of that gain. Not saying that it's not important to still try to gain strength and all of those things, it just becomes a little bit more challenging. So your diet becomes significantly more important. On the other side of it, sleep is also being affected. A lot of menopausal women, perimenopausal women, can have trouble sleeping. They get hot flashes, it wakes them up, things like that. So the importance of recovery becomes very, very important as well.
Right, we all know that all the recovery happens basically when we're sleeping. So if we're not getting any sleep again, we're not. So all signs point to like decrease in our muscle mass, which we know is terrible.
So what can people do, like, I guess, premenopausal, like, to kind of get out ahead of this? Because obviously you don't want to sit there and wait for this to happen and then be like, well, I'm up 30 pounds, so now it's time to get into the gym and get going. Like, what are some things that people can do, like, in their younger years to kind of prepare for this? Obviously, strength training is a big one. Keeping weight off at a younger age is always a good idea. But anything else that people should be focusing on?
I think general lifestyle, like becoming introducing, like you said, strength training before is important, but introducing strength training during that time is going to be an increased stress. It's going to be very challenging. So having that healthy diet, understanding kind of your body and that kind of stuff, but having a good strength base and that good habitual exercise is going to be important, because you're going to feel less motivated to do those things and not want to introduce something brand new.
Same thing. Like, your body's going through a huge stressor.
Yeah.
Right? And then to add in workout, right? Like, that's another stress on your body. So most importantly, that perimenopausal, I guess, is get working on your strength. That is the best thing you can do to combat the menopause, is keep the muscle mass on you, keep your metabolic rate up. And so things like protein are huge. Most women, hey Sam?
Oh, absolutely.
Every single person that comes through this door, they go, I eat lots of protein. You do not eat enough protein.
15%.
I guarantee
10 to 15%.
You are not eating enough protein. And that is the most important factor to keeping your muscle mass on, when everything is going to point towards losing muscle mass. So lifting weights to keep your muscle mass, staying on a protein and probably getting on a protein supplement, and things like working out help regulate your hormones as well, right? So the biggest thing is that we're going to go through a huge swing. So the more we can stay close to that status quo, the more success you're going to have.
Fantastic, ladies. So we have probably about 5-6 minutes left. Any other last points that you want to touch on while we're here? Or is we kind of hit everything pretty much we wanted to hit on?
I think I'm pretty much wrapped up. Like, have you had enough period talk for the day?
I could go all day about this. As Shania Twain said, man, I feel like a woman.
Man, yes. Do you feel enlightened from the male perspective?
From the male perspective, absolutely. As a male coach, it's something that you don't always talk about, right? Because it's uncomfortable, and obviously you have to get comfortable with uncomfortable situations. Sam, you and I talked about that previously. So again, it's great to know kind of this type of cycle and this type of step-by-step phase. Like, obviously I'm educated in certain aspects, but again, knowing like, hey, there's actually a week of decline in performance. It makes a lot of sense, right? Like, obviously you don't assess during those weeks. You don't assess during the quote-unquote bad weeks. But again, it's always opening that communication and understanding like where people are coming from. Again, like you mentioned before, knowing that somebody's having digestive issues is such a big thing, right? Like, not only is menstrual cycle like a big faux pas, like people don't want to talk about it, constipation is another big one, right? Where it's like people just don't want to talk about their poop. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but poop can tell you if you're healthy or not, unfortunately.
It's one of the easiest ways to know if you're
and we don't really want to talk about it. But hey, absolutely. Some great information here, ladies. Thank you so much for doing this one. Springing it on me, essentially. I was hoping in for just an easy little fitness chat here, talk about, what you guys have been doing lately, but I guess we'll have to do that another day and time. So as we wrap up here, where can people find you guys on the social medias? How can people get in touch with you? Crystal, where goes first?
You can, I'm on
find
Facebook.
You at your local senior center?
Yes.
Sorry, I had to get one in.
Just one in today. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Urquhart_fit.
Okay, you gotta spell that out.
What? Everybody knows how to spell Urquhart. URQUHART_fit. Yeah, and hopefully I'll be having our little trainer revenge video up there for your guys' viewing pleasure soon. I know you're all dying to see that.
Well, this is probably going out in January, so
January.
you will have more than enough time. We're recording this in November for everybody listening to this, but we got a lot of podcasts on the go.
Perfect.
Anyways, yeah. So tell me, how can we find you?
And I'm on Instagram at fit_small_Sam. That was wrong. Small_fit Sam. Sorry, one of those Mondays for me.
I do it all the time. If you listen to any one of the outros, it's like you can find me at. Give me 2 seconds. I gotta check.
Where can you find me?
I can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't have a Facebook page as of yet, but hopefully you'll see lots of interesting things on my Instagram coming up. Especially if it comes out in January, it'll give me some time to put some interesting stuff back up there.
And feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions about the menstruation process instead of maybe Rich Hill.
Yeah.
Hey, you can find me everywhere. But
Talk to us about the uncomfortable. That's where Crystal and I like to live.
I love to live there.
Here to expand my brain. So thank you ladies so much for joining me here today. And we'll be back for a little bit of an outro. Bye for now.
There you have it, folks. A great conversation with Sam and Crystal all about the menstrual cycle and what we can do as we're going through it. Again, this one's more for the ladies this week, but that's all right because we have had a couple just for the guys as well. So what did you think? The menstrual cycle, what do you struggle with? Is there any questions that you might have about this while you're training? The results that you might see while the menstrual cycle is happening? Again, give us a comment, give us a quick email, message, whatever it is. We are here to help. So once again, guys, make sure that you tune in to the Real Results podcast moving forward. We should have some great guests coming up here. I do have a couple feelers out there, so hopefully we can get some physiotherapists in here, which should be fun. With that being said, make sure you subscribe on all the major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and so on. Make sure that you check out everything to do with 360 Fitness. You can find it all at www.360fitness.ca. You can find us on Facebook at 360 Fitness Personal Training, whether that's Red Deer or Sherwood Park. You can find us on Instagram at 360 Fitness PT. You can find us on Twitter at 360 Fitness RD. Those are two more active accounts there. And then you can find your host at RS_Hill_Fitness. Wouldn't be an episode without me screwing up that part. And again, if you're looking for the very best of results while being at home, maybe not feeling super comfortable getting in the gym, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, check out the description. We do have a 21-day challenge that's at home. It's self-guided if you want it to be. It's trainer-assisted if you need it to be. But we have those options there. Check that out. Follow the link down below, and that goes for anybody, anywhere, anytime, not just exclusive. Sorry, tongue-tied here today. Not just exclusive for Alberta, but this can go out to anyone and everyone listening to this podcast. So with that being said, guys, we're going to wrap up this edition of the Real Results podcast. Looking forward for our next chat in the next 2 weeks. Until then, guys, stay safe, be kind, and get the best results possible. All right, bye for now.